All right, everybody, welcome to the Real Sharks podcast. It is time for another Game of Thrones episode recap. We're going to be discussing episode 4. We might as well call this episode We Told You So, but this is called Dayu. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, it's the red dragon
Oh,
in
the
it.
Red Dragon versus the Gold Dragon. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting episode. So, first of all, I thought they were going to have a rebellion if they didn't do something in this episode because these last couple of episodes, even though I think, I can speak for my host, we've enjoyed them, but it's been on the terms of like just dragging out the lore and seeing what they can come up with.
Mhm.
We wanted to see, just like everybody else here, we want to see some action too. And
Yeah.
I thought we got that. But first, we had some interesting interactions. You had this weird these Damon hallucinations in this episode, which we know again, and a lot of this was not in the original story, ladies and gentlemen.
No,
It's
it's all new.
a lot of this is new. Um, you had Alice Rivers, and that's one of my biggest already pet peeves already of the episode because I'm pretty
Already.
sure I already told you. I remember with Steve when last
No.
episode I said I think I know who that girl is, but I don't want
Yes.
to like
You didn't want to say it, but
I
you
didn't want to
knew.
say it,
You
yeah, but now I
knew it
know.
was
But
her.
now
She
I know.
drops the
But
name,
yeah,
and I'm like, ah.
yeah. So we had that. We had Aegon, basically getting basically cucked by Aemon.
Yeah.
Basically Aemon letting everyone know who really rules.
Twice he got cooked, pretty much.
Yeah, and you have Sir Kristen Cole moving throughout the Riverlands and throughout the coast. Well, actually, he's on the coast right now, taking a lot of the castles that have
The
declared
castles.
for Rhaenyra and bringing them all to their demise. You had Melees with Rhaenys show up.
Yeah.
It was pretty badass, and she shows up to take on, the usurper's army, basically Kristen Cole, at the behest of also saying bye to the sea snake, Corlys, which
Yeah.
he made a reappearance again. Again, those other guys too. I'm pretty sure I know who they're going to be as well,
You
Steve.
know, you know for sure now.
Yeah. Uh, you had Gwaine snapping at Cole, telling him "I told you so" about a lot of things. But
Yeah.
then, let's go ahead and get to the main thing everyone probably wants to hear us talk about, which was the battle. The battle went down exactly how I would say the book described it, and a little better because I actually enjoyed it because in the book it's brutal, and you keep hearing us talk about how the book is brutal. This was over brutal.
That was
It
pretty
was a
like,
little bit more
dang.
brutal than the book
Yeah.
because you don't hear the dragons scream out and stuff in the book, and in
The
this you
blood and the
had
oil.
and for those of you who didn't watch, if you haven't watched the episode, you need to go watch the episode. You shouldn't be listening to this if you haven't seen the episode. But when Melee shows up to take on everybody, I wanted to get that whole point. When Aegon goes, it was at the denial of the small council, and I loved that. And he was on Sunfire, and we finally got to see Sunfire, and he was
He looked
he
tight.
looked
I
cool.
like that.
He
Yeah.
looked great. But of course, he runs into Melee's, which is has a bigger dragon,
Mhm.
and of course tears him to pieces. And that really happened in the book.
Yeah.
But when it cut open the bile, and they even described the bile when it was like, "Woo!" I was like, oh man, that's brutal,
Just
dude. I was
boiling blood falling
just,
on you, dragging
yeah,
you
it
down.
was so brutal. But the
Yikes.
most important thing I thought was great about it was how they changed the dynamic of Aemon in the show. I'm actually enjoying the two dynamics that they have created for Aegon and Aemon. Basically, Aegon is trying to be a good king while Aemon is just strong. And basically, Aemon basically betrayed his brother in this battle. In the book, that doesn't happen. They just show up together. It's actually a
Yeah.
trap.
Isn't it a 2-on-1? I
It's a
thought.
2-on-1 trap,
Yeah.
basically, that ends up going to shit. But the way it went to crap in the show, man, that was brutal. And for those of you who want some spoilers, everybody, spoilers, because this is what actually happens. You didn't get to see Aegon. Yes, Aegon survives, and they showed that in the recap, but his armor was basically burnt to his body.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he suffered some of the worst burns. And what's interesting is
That's it.
and with right, well, Steve says that's it because actually, in the point of the book in the story, Aegon basically kind of disappears.
For a while.
He
Like that's
disappears
it for
for the
Aegon.
rest of the war. Yeah, and basically, Sunfire is left on the battlefield to basically feast on the dragon carcass and whatever he can find before he
Yeah.
flies off too. And
Yeah,
then he
that's what I thought too,
disappears.
Rob. I wanted some clarification because people were like, "What happens to Sunfire?" I'm like, they just leave him because they can't go back and get him.
Right, he's a
They had
big
to.
dragon.
He's a
Yeah,
big dragon.
and he basically he heals, but then he can't fly right. He's basically
Hmm.
done.
His wing got like
Yeah,
basically
but
gnawed
he
on.
basically feeds on melees. But the way Rainey's died was pretty brutal with Vagar. I mean, that was pretty much how it went. Because
Mhm.
well, actually, what you guys saw in the show happens a little later between two different characters. But that battle was pretty good. Like when the dragons
Yeah.
lock, and that's why it's called the Dance of Dragons, is when they spin and they do that
It's
whole
when they
thing.
yeah when they do that and they're spiraling upwards. That's
Right.
the Dance of Dragons.
That actually takes place again, but usually in a more light sense.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, Rainey's biting the dust is was inevitable, and the way it went
Yeah.
down is
So
pretty brutal. And it looks
yeah.
like it's going to be even more brutal, like the next episode when they start parading her body and her dragon's head through the streets, which didn't happen in the book, which was never happened.
No.
But I like that's going on. I also liked how Kristen Cole kind of stuck by his guns a little bit more, and he was like, "Aemon, our king has fallen. Did you see him? Worried
Hmm.
about the king for first and foremost,
Yeah.
knowing and seeing also kind of what Aemon was doing. He was it looked like he was about ready to put Aegon out of his misery before
Pretty
he
much, and
stopped.
then he got caught, and he's like, "Oh shit."
So, what did you think of overall of the show, Steve? Of
I
the
thought
episode?
yeah, I thought it was good.
This is the good, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, this is the
We're gonna
good.
get the
I felt
bad.
like this is what we've been waiting for. I think everybody has been waiting for the Dance of Dragons, and it was very, very cool. The only thing people were kind of like about was you didn't get the actual infantry units down there kind of doing anything. You didn't really get a lot of
Well,
the soldier
that
battles, but I'm like, but
they
you
were
know,
kind of watching what was
they
going
were
on in the
watching
book
what's going
too.
on. Yeah, it's like, and then again, you got to think like there's blood and oil bubbling from these dragons, spilling on them and like burning them alive. So yeah, I'm gonna watch it as well if I'm fighting. But I thought it was tight. I thought it was very, very cool. I like how there was no words spoken when she's on the dragon. She's in dragon mode. You see the bonds. That was like you were saying about Aegon and Sunfire, where he's like putting his head to Sunfire, and you see the bonds between her and
Yeah,
Elise. And dude, that was I love
and
that.
it wasn't so cliche like how they made it in Game of Thrones. And I want to point out too, ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
they actually have saddles. If you didn't notice, they actually have saddles in these with these dragons, and it makes total more sense, doesn't it?
Rather than just riding a
Rather
scaly
than just
dragon.
barebacking that dragon.
Yeah. Just like wow.
But let's get to the bad, Steve. And I guess I'll start the bad off with let me tell you about the story of Ice and Fire, Steve.
Oh
This is a story that takes place thousands of years ago in Westeros. It's a prophecy. And yes, the song of Ice and Fire
the
will
pictures of yeah.
influence every story from now on in Game of Thrones because you must ask yourself if there's a Targaryen, is he the prince that is promised?
I
Or
yeah, and
is he the pretender?
specifically. Yeah. He told you
It
of the
doesn't matter if you're Baela or Viserys or Aegon the Fifth.
or
Is
Aegon.
he the chosen one?
Is he
Is he the prince that is promised?
promised? Yeah. It is an Aegon. It's Aegon the Destroyer. Shut up. No one cares.
Okay,
Rhaenyra, please.
this is the part, ladies and gentlemen, where I am so down in the dumps with because I feel like they have justified their bad. This is we've spoken about this in the last episode of Game of Thrones. It was everyone knows the ending of Game of Thrones was terrible, but I feel like these guys can't just take a defeat, go home, count their
No.
losses.
No, they
And
can't.
then as the stories go, you may lose a battle, but you come back and you win the war. What you don't do, excuse me, is insert your crappy writing into another story to justify the bad ending that you wrote. Because I don't
It's
care.
another series. Come
And,
on.
and George R. R. Martin was all like, I like what they wrote about that. And I was like, don't even listen to that fucker. I was like, he thought
Not
Hold the
him.
Door was a good idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. Because I still think he was messing around with them when he told him about Hold the Dough.
I think
You
so
know,
too. I think he
they were
completely
like,
was
is that really the ending? He was like, yeah,
He's
that
like,
was
yeah.
Hold Door. That was his name. The whole Hold the Door. Get it? I was like, oh
My God.
god. But I digress. Anyway, but this
But
writing,
specifically, Rob, they said the prince that was promised. They're literally going there now. They're not going to stop.
they are literally going there, and it's terrible because they don't need to go there. They don't. They don't
Stop.
need.
Just leave it.
We were talking about in the last couple episodes how we were impressed how much they've been able to drag out the lore.
Yeah.
Inserting this crap is just off of the ego. It really is. It really is off of just terrible writers' ego because you are trying to just justify your bad ending of Game of Thrones.
But also, Rob, I'm like, what is their end game to doing this? Why are they doing it? Obviously,
Like I said, you have basically set this up for every time you do a new Game of Thrones episode now. If it's about a Targaryen, it's going to be like, oh, but is he the prince that's promised?
Yeah, is it the prophecy?
You know what I mean?
Did you
And
mention
we
that?
already know where that story was. It was in Game of Thrones. So now you've written yourself into a shitstorm where you're never going to get out of it. It doesn't matter who you put in a show now.
Rhaenyra's character, because that's all she's kind of been for the last
prince
two
that is
episodes.
promised.
So if Jace goes to her and she's like, "Mom, I'm getting mad because you're leaving," well, let me tell you a story of the prince that was promised. No, dude, shut up. Just stop. It's like she at this point in the book, just for people that have not read the book, Rhaenyra is like she's in go mode. She is like legitimately like, no, we're going after him. She's a tactician. She's not like this like wavering like I don't know what to do.
I'm in remorse. I'm
in the remorse.
Constantly.
She's going like.
I mean, she does mourn a lot. Don't get us wrong. She does. She does have a lot to mourn for. Yeah. But the fact is, though, when she is in go mode, she is in go mode, and there is no stopping her.
Yeah, she's like,
and she gets results.
Right. Where's the results here? Everyone's just pissed at her because she did that thing. Like, yeah, I went to go see.
Blah blah blah. So dumb, and it made the story stupid. And then Alicent goes back, and she's all like, let me tell you about the prince that was promised, and I think I heard wrong, and it was.
Yeah, I know her face.
It was all like, well, what did you hear? It's like I heard it from Bill, and then Terry, and then. It was just terrible.
She made Aegon the Destroyer, not that Aegon. Well, it's too late now. It's like
Aegon the Conqueror. Oh, the Conqueror. But it was bad, man, because I like for all the good stuff that was in that episode, it had some crap, and that was the crap. And I cannot sit here and keep justifying like why they did it because I'm like, oh, why would you write that in there? There was like a million ways you could go about that.
Let's spread around that crap, dude, because what are they doing with my man Daemon, dude? The let's be real. The best Targaryen in the entire series. Yeah. The badass of them badasses. So, everyone likes Aemon now, but this is the guy.
Alice Rivers is an interesting character that they got in here because basically, I'm glad you brought that up, Steve. It reminded me of that. So Alice Rivers is not really. She's kind of a mix of a character, kind of fake name because I don't think that's her name in Game of Thrones. But basically, that was originally who Robb Stark married. Was Rivers. But basically, this chick just kind of pops out. And for those of you who have never read the book, spoilers again. Daemon ends up staying at Harrenhal for quite a long time. I mean, he pretty much stays there like most of the war. And he ends up hooking up with a chick who becomes basically a dragon seed, which I think is going to be the worm. Which I think is, but I also think this chick who gave him all these hallucinations, this Alice Rivers, is I think she's also going to be like a lover, maybe in some.
She has to. She's like, "You're going to die tonight." She's like repeating that. I'm just like, no, she's going to factor into that.
Yeah, so I think she's going to be a lover, as well as I'm pretty sure they're hinting off that Corlys was the father of the guy who saved him. And basically he's going to be a dragon seed.
He's going to be that's 100%.
Because you already heard the dropping. They already started to drop little breadcrumbs of the whole, we have more dragons, and that is true, but they don't have enough writers for them. Because for those of you who don't know, Dragonstone harbors more dragons than actual King's Landing. King's Landing, they're basically tied up in that the dragon pit. They're chained up there. Yeah. Dragonstone, they pretty much roam free. They have like their own caves, and there's even wild dragons that exist.
Yep.
around Dragonstone.
Giant things that they're.
One called the cannibal that eats other dragons, or that is known to
Oh,
eat other
right.
dragons.
Yeah, I forgot about
Yeah.
that one.
So
Yeah.
there's a few different dragons that come around, because the cannibal one will play a role with Sunfire later.
Hmm.
But yeah, the bad writing is what really kind of overshadowed everything else that they did. But yeah, they are taking away from Damon quite a bit.
They iced him, dude. I was
Um,
like,
they
man,
did. They
come
put him
on.
in this place where he's basically going to have these trips. But what I did like, and I will say this, is that he was looking at the Weirwood tree at Harrenhal. That was supposed to
Oh.
play a way bigger role in Game of Thrones. I'm so glad they actually did that, because
Mhm.
there was a theory for a long time that, how Bran was actually going to see how his aunt and basically Rhaegar married was through the weirwood trees, because he can see through them, because that's what a green seer can do. And
Yeah.
basically he can see through the trees. And the one at Harrenhal, this was just a theory that basically witnessed the engagement between the two of them in the book, because the tree in Harrenhal is a way more important location in Game of Thrones and in the history of Game of Thrones than it's been portrayed in the show. So I really liked how they did that with Damon. However, though, it was so kind of glassed over and kind of just breezed over. It was like, oh, okay, you're not really gonna. For those of you who don't know the lore, like me and Steve, it kind of would go past you, like, oh, that's just a really cool scene. It's like
Yeah.
that's a really important
That's
location
a
that they're
super impactful
again,
moment.
they're trying to basically be like, oh, we didn't forget about that from Game of Thrones, because again, Damon didn't do this in the book.
No.
He just chills at Harrenhal, goes around
Yeah.
killing everything.
That's pretty
He
much it.
he will leave eventually to take King's Landing with Rhaenyra.
Yeah, but that's
This
not
is
until much later. So I don't know if he's going to
yeah.
be there for the remainder of the season or what,
What's going to be interesting though is how unleashed Aemon's going to be, because Aemon is
Oh,
basically being
my man is
and oh, by the way, good job guys by showing his eye more. Awesome.
Yeah, that was tight. Yeah.
Awesome. And his eye needs to be seen way more. But they're basically putting him up to be the new the almost Magar the Cruel. This guy's just gonna burn everything down with his
Yeah, I'm
dragon,
like he's more
which is
is he
true. That's
he
basically what he did. That's
so
basically what he did.
Aemon is more, yeah, he's more cruel than he is mad. Like he is in
Right.
control, but he's just like crazy in control.
Yeah,
His
it's interesting
king
because
does things
he's gonna not, and he doesn't declare himself king. He just kind of declares himself like in charge until
in
he's like, oh,
charge.
until my brother gets back. And
Hmm.
it's gonna be interesting how they play that though into the whole will he kill him when he comes back or anything like that.
Yeah, because
So
he knew what happened. He yelled out no, and he
mhm,
saw him do it, so he's pissed.
right. So we'll see what will happen with that. It's gonna be interesting because now we saw in the next episode they're gonna have Aegon return in that little box thing. So it's gonna be interesting how he looks because spoilers again, our audience. It is said that that Aegon suffered that from the battle, he basically was incapacitated, crippled,
Crippled, yeah.
um, always like basically medicated with milk of the poppy. And for those of you who don't know, that's equivalent to their heroin in Game of Thrones.
It's like a painkiller.
It's like their medicinal pain, but it's strong though.
Super
It's
strong.
real. It's really
And they
strong.
could
I mean,
like
it's
kill
called
you.
milk of the poppy. Come on,
Yeah.
yeah, we know what it is. And
Yeah.
basically, this is what keeps them alive for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting, ladies and gentlemen, what's going to play out because I guarantee you, my predictions are too when Rhaenyra takes the Iron Throne next time, or maybe, probably the next couple episodes, maybe even next season.
Yeah.
That when she does do this, that the whole child killing thing is going to really come into play with all that.
I'm glad you said that, Rob, because they were laying that in on that last couple episodes. Remember, they were
Mhm.
like, Rhaenyra, killer of children, you know what I mean,
Right.
killing
They've
people,
been the
babe
propaganda
killer.
machine
Yeah.
is in the works in the people.
So yeah.
But that has been this episode of the Real Sharks Game of Thrones recap. We hope you've enjoyed it. And you have a good night, all our lords and ladies, from Rob and Steve,
Yo.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, outside of the Westeros coast. I like that. That was
I
good.
like that. I like the outro.